Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Double Wave Yellows podcast. Today, we've got another VSC podcast, and we're going to be having a look at the season-long battle so far between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. And as always, my two friends, Hodders and Tyson, are joining me to discuss everything. How are we doing, chaps?
Yep, doing good.
Yep, not too bad. Just having to re-educate myself in F1 after this long break that we've had.
I know, 4 weeks off we've had, but we're getting back to it, and the track action commences tomorrow morning. But before we watch that, we're going to have a little bit of a look back at the season so far for our two title rivals, and we're going to have a look at it race by race. So obviously starting off, the first race in Bahrain, where Hamilton won from Verstappen in second, but Verstappen forced to give first place back after exceeding track limits later on to try and pass Lewis Hamilton. Hodders, it was such a great race, and it's such a shame that something like that kind of decided the result.
It really is, although it's nothing we haven't seen before, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. And Tyson, it was the first mark, that battle, that we were in for a real season-long slog.
Yeah, it was a really great way to start the season because once again it looked like, it's going to be Mercedes, Hamilton's Edge Championship, but no, Verstappen showed that he's going to be on the pace this year in that race.
Absolutely. So at the end of race one, Hamilton had a 25-point lead to Verstappen's 18, so 7-point advantage there. We then went to Imola for a slightly damp Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, and roles were reversed as Verstappen came home in first, Hamilton in second with the fastest lap. But this was the first sign that every single mistake was going to be critical, because Hamilton slides off in the greasy conditions, getting stuck in the gravel trap for well over a minute. We're all thinking, no, that's it, that's his race done, because he was lapped by Verstappen, but literally seconds after clambering out of the gravel trap, a huge accident between Hamilton's teammate Valtteri Bottas and George Russell ensures that the red flag is shown, and he's able to get the lap back. Essentially, Tyson, a little bit of luck, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, Lewis was very fortunate that red flag happened so that they could get things back in order.
Because obviously, without that, I think he was ninth when the red flag was displayed. But obviously, under the rules, he was allowed.
So, yeah.
Yeah, he was able to reclaim that lap back. But Hodders Verstappen had an absolutely superb weekend that day.
He really did, and he really did, rather. It was one of those weekends where he didn't really put a foot wrong, and as I've already mentioned, Hamilton being a very lucky boy indeed.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of the championship standings, Hamilton's still leading on 44 points, but his lead reduced to 1 point, Verstappen on 43. So, on to the second of the European events, and off to Portugal, where Hamilton led Verstappen home in another 1-2 for the championship rivals. Verstappen, unfortunately, losing more points as a result of track limits violation. This time he lost to 1 point as his fastest lap time was deleted. Tyson, this was a good battle between the two drivers, but ultimately Hamilton was just best on the day.
Yep, it was a good fight, but honestly, I don't think Verstappen had any answer to Hamilton in that race.
Absolutely. And Hodders, I think Max needs to watch back our VSC on the track limits, because the second offence in 3 races, and it's not good. It's costing him what could be critical points.
Yes, I do hope Max is listening somewhere who listens to this eventually, because we're pretty clear on track limits and how they can really be detrimental to the season, and particularly one where every point counts.
So then Hamilton extends his lead quite nicely. Hamilton on 69, Max on 61. We then go to Spain, where again it's another Hamilton Verstappen 1-2, but this time that the tyre strategies we could see are starting to come into play here. Hodders, a 2-stop strategy for Hamilton versus Max's 1-stop paying dividends once again.
It really did, and it rather set precedent for the season so far that tyre management and strategy really can pay off, as we'll probably talk about later on. And it was one of those rare occasions where, so far this season, Mercedes got it right.
Yeah, and Tyson, we've previously seen that at Hungary, I think in 2019 or 2020, where Hamilton's realised he can't get past Max on the track, so he decides an extra pit stop, faster tyres, and it gets him ahead. And it's superb when that sort of strategy pays off.
Yeah, that is why Mercedes has been so successful over the last few years. They are just very clinical with the strategy, and when they execute it right, they execute it to perfection, just like they did in Spain.
Absolutely. So again, Hamilton increasing the lead. Hamilton up to 94 points at this point, just 4 rounds in. Verstappen on 80. So a near perfect start to the season for Lewis. But it was all a change at Monaco as Verstappen leads home to win the race in Monte Carlo. Hamilton in 7th, and Hodders, this was an awful weekend for Lewis.
It was a dreadful weekend all round for Lewis, and you could almost say uncharacteristic of him. I mean, we'll openly admit that Monaco is one of those circuits where you're more likely to see a pig take flight than to see overtakes. But even then, 7th is a terrible position to be in at that stage in the season, more so with Monaco.
Equally, Tyson, Verstappen was able to luck into the result after Leclerc failed to start the race from pole position.
Yeah, that was very unfortunate for Leclerc. Home race, it looked like everything was going his way, but these things just happen sometimes. Then the exact opposite from Spain. When Mercedes get it wrong, they can get it very wrong.
Absolutely. And this was to prove a key moment in the championship battle as Verstappen takes the lead on 105 points from Hamilton's 101. Round 6 in Baku, Azerbaijan, and oh my goodness, what a race that these two drivers will look back on and say, what if, as you know, if is F1 spelled backwards. Tyson, we all thought that was going to be Verstappen's race to win until 5 laps from home.
Yeah, just unfortunate had the tyre blowout, but as you said, this is probably going to be the race they look back on. What if so many different outcomes could have happened in this race?
And Hodders, Hamilton must have thought all his prayers had been answered when he saw the red flag and obviously the tyre blowout. You thought, yep, just a nice quick 2-lap burst to get home and win the race until.
Yes, until of course you could safely say here, and this is terribly pun laden, you could say that the magic very much backfired because the magic setting on the brakes went completely wrong, and he went headlong into the runoff and ended up in total last place, even behind Mazepin.
Yeah, and that is a bit of an insult.
And that's no slight on Nikita, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's fair. So. Yeah, the championship standings staying as they are. Verstappen on 105, Hamilton on 101. I think we've got to argue that had it been a normal, inverted commas, run to the flag in those final 5 laps, Verstappen would have increased his lead by 7 points at this stage. But quite clearly that didn't happen. So moving on to France, and this is where the Red Bulls started to gather pace. Verstappen winning from Hamilton in 2nd, and Hodders Red Bull adopting the Mercedes strategy.
Absolutely, I suppose it's a case of if you can't beat them, join them, and taking on that pit strategy proved absolutely wonders when it came to that race, and it paid off handsomely, and it rather left Mercedes out in the lurch.
Yeah, and Tyson, as you say, we're now looking at crucial points of the season. Is this the point where Mercedes' strategy calls are starting to go wrong?
I believe it is, because Red Bull, they definitely took a page out of Mercedes' book in that race. Rather than being reactive, they were taking the initiative, they were setting the pace, and it paid off for them.
So Verstappen then increasing his lead up to 131 points, Hamilton 12 points behind on 119. We then go for the first of the 2 races at the Red Bull Ring, and Verstappen is absolutely dominant, crushing all rivals before him. So Verstappen winning from Hamilton in 2nd. And Tyson, this was a surefire sign that Red Bull were well and truly in the title hunt here.
Yeah, the home race, Verstappen's ahead in the drivers, Red Bull's ahead in the constructors. They had everything going their way going into this.
Absolutely. Okay, so at that point, the title race seemingly and the momentum in Verstappen's hands. Verstappen on 156, Hamilton on 138. The second of the Red Bull Ring race. Verstappen first, Hamilton fourth. Hodders, big surprise here.
It really was when you considered that Hamilton was probably out for revenge, and then to have what happened to him to take him down to fourth would have been a real blow to Mercedes' hopes.
Absolutely. It was the weekend where it did go wrong for Lewis, obviously suffering rear brake damage whilst chasing after Verstappen. He had to eventually let his teammate and I think it's Sergio Perez pass. But either way, a finish off the podium. And Tyson, a fantastic weekend for the Dutchman.
Yep, he scored a Grand Chelem that weekend. They put in 32 points clear in the championship, and Red Bull, they just had all the momentum coming out of Austria. Mercedes, I think they were looking at Red Bull thinking, we've got a challenge on our hands now.
Even more so, as you say, the points extended. Verstappen on 182, Hamilton on 150, so 32 points behind, a full race victory plus fastest lap as we head to the British Grand Prix, where bang. I think that's all that can be said, Hodders. I think that's all that can be said, Hodders, on that one.
Yeah, bang. Not preferably, but definitely between Hamilton and Verstappen at Cops, causing the red flag. And the rest, as they say, is history. Recent history at that.
And if you want to know more, go and watch our VSC podcast when we dissected the Hamilton and Verstappen incident. Tyson, obviously, it was helped somewhat by the fact that Verstappen got points in the new sprint race format, but the ramifications of that incident between Lewis and Max are going to be far-reaching throughout the rest of the season because obviously Verstappen had critical damage to his engine.
Absolutely. It was a massive talking point at the time, and with Verstappen getting the damage, that could compromise him later on in the season if he has to make engine changes and stuff.
Yeah, we are expecting engine penalties to be coming Max's way sometime soon. So after the British Grand Prix, the gap closes to 12 points for Verstappen on 185, Hamilton on 177. And then we head into Budapest, the final race before the summer break. And if Verstappen thought he'd got his bad luck out the way on the first lap, he still had a little bit more to come at the first corner in Budapest. Tyson.
Yeah, that was a mess at the first corner. There's nothing else that can be said about it, as we went through on the podcast last time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Hodders, this time Verstappen getting an advantage out of the red flag.
Yes, he did. Had it not been for the red flag, and the collision would almost certainly finish his race as it did for others more than anything else. And he still finished the race. Not bad for half a car.
Absolutely. But a critical mistake from Lewis is that he didn't pit for dry tyres when the race was restarting behind the safety car. He ended up dropping to 14th. So a well-known phrase on this podcast, the recovery drive, managing to get all the way back up to second place, which leaves the drivers' title race looking like this. Hamilton on 195 points. Verstappen 12 points behind on 187.
That's 8 points.
It's a close run going into the second half of the season. Interesting. So I think looking at the championship, I think it's fair to say that both drivers have had an equal amount of good luck and an equal amount of bad luck. They've both taken advantage of a red flag to make repairs, gain back time on the leaders. I think I'm trying to think of penalties. I mean, Lewis had obviously his 10-second penalty at Silverstone, but obviously he clawed that one back. I think they've both had equal amounts, haven't they?
both had their equal amounts of disciplinary measures, including, of course, Bahrain, where Verstappen had to give the place back for exceeding track limits. I think it's I think the whole championship, in terms of errors, in terms of advantages, it's very finely balanced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Tyson, we were chatting about it just before we came on air. In terms of the points dropped, we think the points dropped that drives off. We think Verstappen's probably dropped 33 in terms of he lost the win at Azerbaijan, he had to give the place back at Bahrain, and he lost the fastest lap point in Portugal. So that's 33 from Max. In terms of Lewis, he dropped 25 at Azerbaijan. You could potentially argue he's dropped 7 at Hungary for not pitting. I can't really see where else. So 32 dropped by Lewis. So it's close.
Yeah, it's been very even, and that's exactly what we've wanted to see. Both drivers, they've had opportunities where they could have scored points on the other, but they just haven't taken advantage of it, and it's kept the championship really close.
And long may it continue, hopefully, all the way to the final race in Abu Dhabi in December. So speaking of final races, let's have a look at the calendar. We've had more changes since we last spoke with you all. So this weekend we've got the Belgian Grand Prix, and then it's followed by the Netherlands, where there might be one or two fans in orange out there, and then the Italian Grand Prix, where we're going to see the second of the sprint qualifying races there. Next up, we've got Russia on the 26th of September and then Turkey on the 3rd of October. We then should have had the Japanese Grand Prix on the 10th of October. That has been cancelled. We don't know yet if that will be replaced or if that will be a gap on the race calendar. After that, we've got the Americas triple header, so USA on the 24th, Mexico on the 31st of October, and then Brazil on the 7th of November. We've now been told Qatar could be added to the calendar. There's nothing official yet. That could be on the 21st of November, replacing the Australian Grand Prix. And then the final two races in December, Saudi Arabia on the 5th and Abu Dhabi on the 12th. Tyson, 11 races potentially to go. We're nicely set at the halfway point. It's going to be a real good battle over lots of really good, exciting racetracks.
It definitely is, and I'm very much looking forward to the triple header that's coming up. Belgium, Monza, both great tracks, and the Dutch one, I've driven it on F1 2021. Love it.
Absolutely. But equally, we're Hodders. We were checking the news going into looking at the calendar prior to broadcast tonight. We reckon we could see USA, Mexico, and Brazil all stripped off the calendar because of COVID problems around the world.
Yeah, the Delta variant is definitely starting to bite in those countries, and depending on how things go over the next month or so, they could well fall as well. We could yet end up with a somewhat curtailed season.
Yeah, let's hope not, because with Brazil as the other sprint qualifying race on the calendar, that could be 81 points potentially stripped away from the drivers. We hope not, but obviously F1 has done a very good job of keeping all of its participants safe. So let's just hope nothing more happens of that. Okay, so before we go, let's have a quick chance to see what we all think is going to happen going into the second half of the season. Hodders, what are your thoughts?
It's a difficult one to say, because I think so far the season's been so level between the two of them with so many incidents and everything else. It's very difficult to tell. I mean, I'm not sure how many of us would have expected it to be this close at the beginning of the season. So I'm somewhat on the fence, though I feel like it's going to be very interesting as to where and when the engine penalties bite for Max as well. I think that's really going to be the bellwether as to what happens going into the second half of the season.
Mm-hmm. And Tyson, what about you?
Yeah, I think Hodders brings up the good point there. Could be engine penalties that decide everything. I think right now Mercedes have the momentum going into the second half of the season, but Belgium, Netherlands, the next two races, the Orange Army is going to be out in full force cheering Max on.
Absolutely. And yeah, for me, I think those engine penalties are going to be critical to the championship. I think equally, don't forget, Mercedes have got a lot of experience going into the final, 6-7 races, fighting for a championship. So they know what that's going to take. They've got that experience. Red Bull, yes, they have had previous experience, but the last time they were in a championship battle was 2013 with Sebastian Vettel, and it wasn't in the hybrid era. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. For me, I think I'm going to try and get off the fence on this one. I think it is going to be Hamilton that wins it, but I think it will go down to December before it gets decided. There you go. You can all quote me on that one when my prediction goes wrong. Oh dear. Hodders, Tyson, thank you for your input as always, much appreciated. Thank you to everyone at home for tuning in, for listening, for watching. We hope you enjoyed. Don't forget, leave us a comment down below. We always want to hear from you what your thoughts are on all the topics that we raise. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe. Enjoy this weekend's Belgian Grand Prix. We will be back next weekend, next Friday, discussing the Belgian Grand Prix and obviously building up to the Dutch Grand Prix. And then on the 10th of September, we'll review the Italian Grand Prix. We'll review the Dutch Grand Prix building up to the Italian Grand Prix. I'll get there eventually.
It's a Grand Prix somewhere.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then on the 17th of September, we will review the Italian Grand Prix. Cool. Thanks very much for listening, everybody. Be good, and if you can't be good, be safe. From all of us here at Double Wave Yellows, take care, and bye-bye.